Joining me now here on set is the Canadian ambassador to the U.S., Kristen Hillman. Ambassador Hillman, we appreciate you coming in today to talk to us about this. I know you were in the meeting last week with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Can you take us inside the room a bit? Did you get any indications that the conversation there was going to be helpful in trying to tamp down tensions and perhaps remove these tariffs or block the reciprocal tariffs?
Well, thanks, Aaron. Thanks very much for having me. I think that the answer to your question is, I think that the administration is moving towards the April 2nd deadline, and there wasn't anything in that meeting that would have suggested otherwise. The meeting was helpful, though, because one of the things that it did was it allowed Howard Lutnick and USTR Greer the opportunity to lay out for us the tariff strategy of the administration for the whole world. We had been talking to them quite a bit already, but really on just Canada-U.S. things. And there they really talked to us about how they plan to have it affect the whole world. And that was useful for us to understand. And we were able to also talk to them about how we really believe that Canada-U.S. trade will help the president, in fact, achieve his economic goals.
So if these tariffs on April 2nd do go into effect and affect Canada more, is Canada going to respond? Is there something that you all have thought about and perhaps decided to put in place if these reciprocal tariffs do, in fact, take effect?
So to date, we have responded to every tariff action with a reciprocal or a response in putting on tariffs of our own. We will see what happens on April 2nd. I think nothing is off the table, but it's really hard to make a definitive statement until we really know what that's going to look like, and we really just don't know yet.
So do the conversations continue? Is there, I think your foreign minister talked about an off-ramp or trying to figure out some way to affect and change what's been happening. Is there any expectation that conversations can continue in a way that would be helpful to change the reality come April 2nd in particular?
Well, I mean, I think there has to be, because the truth is that Canada is the biggest customer of the United States. We buy more from you than any other country on the planet. And these tariffs are hurting American, companies, American workers, American jobs. We have 12 offices across this country, and businesses small and large are really talking about how this is affecting their bottom line. And I'm sure that we're going to be able to find a way to make it make sense, because ultimately the administration here, and of course our government in Canada, is going to need to take into account the price at the pump, the price at the grocery store, the ability to buy a new home, all of these things that the tariffs are making more difficult in both our countries.
There was a point where the Trump administration really talked about these tariffs being tied to the flow of fentanyl across the border. And we should note that less than 1% of fentanyl intercepted at the U.S. border comes from Canada. Do you have any degree of clarity on what it would take to roll back these tariffs from the United States? What sort of the administration's end game is here?
I think the tariffs are being used, different tariffs or have different purposes. I think that the initial set of tariffs was related to border and fentanyl, although Canada leaned hard into that, even though, as you say, we are not responsible for the fentanyl trafficking into the United States. We have a big fentanyl crisis in Canada, too, and the fentanyl precursors are coming from China. But that being said, any bit of fentanyl is too much. And so we were very happy to address any of the issues, all of the issues that the administration had, that the borders had, we have. Beyond that, I think other tariffs are in place for different reasons. Steel and aluminum, those tariffs are in place in order to, according to the president, try to reshore more steel and aluminum production in the United States. And I guess what I would say to that is, being the country that is your biggest steel and aluminum, provider, is that is an objective that, of course, makes sense. But while those factories are ramping up, while those mills are ramping up, which can take a long time, a 25% tariff just makes things a lot more expensive for U.S. manufacturers.
We've heard the president say on more than one occasion that the U.S. doesn't need anything from Canada. He's talked about lumber and cars and things of that nature. What's your response to that very direct statement?
Look, I don't think the evidence would suggest that there are things that we have in Canada, resources, there are minerals, there are energy resources that we have that contribute to U.S. prosperity. About a third of what we sell you is energy. And that energy is, one, keeps the price at the pump low, two, is used for U.S. factories, and also, frankly, some of our crude oil, almost all of it, is refined and then sold to third countries at 3 times the price. So you may not need it, but it certainly does contribute to a vital American economy. I think that what we need to talk about is what exactly are the president's concerns in some of these sectors, because from where we sit, it's a real win-win situation, or even, frankly, just a win situation for the United States, as you are, I think, quite importantly, getting a lot of very strategic goods from us. And if we don't sell them to the U.S., we have lots of other customers, but we'd like to sell them to the United States. You're our neighbor, and we want to ensure that all of these strategic products and energy products are here for the American people.
I do want to ask you that the OECD cut economic growth, its economic growth outlook for the U.S., for Canada, for Mexico. How much damage could President Trump's policies do to Canada at this point? And is there anything that Canada can do about that?
Well, I mean, I think that they will have an effect on Canadian economic performance. They'll also have an effect on U.S. economic performance and, as you say, Mexican economic performance. Of course, there are things we can do, and we are concentrating, indeed, on making sure that we are doing everything for Canadians and the Canadian economy. We are looking at diversifying our markets and selling to other customers that are interested in, free and fair trade. And we are also really looking forward to finding ways to work with our industries to just ramp up Canadian products being sold in Canada.
We just have a few seconds left
Yes.
here, but I want to ask you, do you think the United States is still a reliable partner for Canada?
I think it can be. I think that right now we are quite unsettled by rules and pacts that we have had that we agreed to, including the most recent trade agreement with President Trump in his first term, having the U.S. turn their back on those without a conversation with us. That is very unsettling to Canadian businesses and to Canadians. And I think they are questioning whether or not we can have a resilient relationship with the United States. I believe that we can, but I think it's going to take some time to get back to that kind of place.
All right. We will all be paying close attention. Ambassador Hillman, we appreciate you making time today for us. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.